Now, you may know a couple of days ago, the U.S. hit a record in terms of average daily cases, which is, again, is complete opposite of what should have been happening. I know a lot of folks got short memory. If you take into consideration what not only the person that we're about to watch and what she said, who was the director of the CDC, considering back when the vaccinations first were being rolled out around March, she was saying that, hey, people that are getting this vaccination aren't getting it and aren't getting sick, okay, until they were. And that was the backbone as why they were able to not only get the emergency usage, basically selling it on immunity, but also why they wanted restrictions based on the unvaccinated, because they acted as if you were a ticking time bomb. But if you were vaccinated, you weren't. Okay. Transmission is at an all-time high. So we know no matter how it is that you feel about this shit, considering how many people that we got vaccinated, this number shouldn't be anywhere near what it was when we didn't have it, yet we're hitting records. Okay. Let's listen to her as she was on CNN and what she's got to say.
Berlinski, thank you for being here with us this morning. And I want to start with the change in the CDC guidance that cuts the isolation period in half if you're asymptomatic. So how did the CDC settle on 5 days for everyone?
I can answer that for her, but I'm going to let her do it.
Good morning, Caitlin. Thanks for having me. So we looked at several areas of science here. First, the science of how much transmission happens in the period of time after you're infected. We know that the most amount of transmission occurs in those 1 to 2 days before you develop symptoms, those 2 to 3 days after you develop symptoms. And if you map that out, those 5 days account for somewhere between 85 to 90% of all transmission that occurs.
All right, so they're saying that now, because of my science, right? And apparently they just now stumbled across this information. But according to my science, that most of 85 to 90, again, that's what she said, not me, percent of the transmission happens at basically the beginning stages. So with that being said, they cut it in half in terms of what your required quarantining must be, even though I don't give a shit about anything that they're saying. I'm going to do what I want. But, there are people that listen to the CDC nonetheless. So that's some little background and context as far. It used to be 10 days. Now it's 5.
So we really wanted to make sure that during those first 5 days, you were spent in isolation. That's when most of it occurs. And then there is, of course, this tail end, a period of time in those last 5 days, where we're asking you to mask. But the other things that we were looking at is the epidemiology here. We are seeing and expecting even more cases of this Omicron variant. Many of those cases are mildly symptomatic, if not asymptomatic, and especially among those who are vaccinated and unvaccinated. And then finally, the behavioral science. What will people actually do when people need to get back to work? What is it that they will actually do? And if we can get them to isolate, we do want to make sure that they're isolating in those first 5 days when they're maximally infectious.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like this decision had just as much to do with business as it did with the science.
Well, so it really had a lot to do with what we thought people would be able to tolerate. We have seen relatively low rates of isolation for all of this pandemic. Some science has demonstrated less than a third of people are isolating when they need to. And so
understand what it was that she just said. And that was that it's a number as arbitrary. And, I guess I can give her some benefit because she's explaining that, okay, with transmission during the first days for the most part. But when it was fielded to her regarding the business aspect, she just flat out told y'all that this was just what you guys could stand. I'll rewind that just real quick. Just a little bit.
This pandemic, some science has demonstrated,
as it did with the science.
Well, so it really had a lot to do with what we thought people would be able to tolerate.
So she said that it had a lot to do with what people would tolerate. Now, look, I do believe that some of y'all are going to have to just concede that, you were wrong. Okay? It is the apocalypse that never came. And the CDC has spent a lot of time building policy around what they think you should do based upon what limitations you have, which isn't actually scientific at all. It's what can you tolerate? What can we get you to do without having as much pushback is effectively what that fucking shit means. Ain't got nothing to do with science. That's just what you would tolerate. But I also think it's a way to soften you up, because at some point y'all do understand. Now, when that is, I guess is up for determination, or rather to be determined. But at some point they're going to concede to the point to where you just do whatever you want, right? You already have spots like the NFL who just said flat out they not testing anybody that's asymptomatic. Okay? So at some point they're going to get it to where those restrictions are not as much as what, or rather as strenuous as what they had been before in terms of what they recommend or require. But that's in a way to save face, because they get to say, well, the science changed, right? It's not that we were entirely wrong or incorrect. God forbid that there actually had been other scientists that were in this field that were maybe left out of the room because they weren't perpetuating, I don't know, pharmaceutical company jabs and doom and gloom, who said this. And now all of a sudden people stumble across it 2 years later. But that's what this is about. Right? Y'all do understand that. It's to soften you guys up. And if that works, and if they are successful, then these guys who are fucking criminals, I will call them what they are going to get away with all of the shit that they did to you. All of the bullshit that they put you through the past couple of years, all by way of the guidance of the CDC guidelines. How many times have you heard that? Which changed on a whim sometimes. Sometimes they did it. Sometimes they, would come in and despite no new, y'all remember when they lifted that recommendation for I think it was the social distancing, and there wasn't even any new science that they presented. They just said, well, shit, y'all get to go around and do whatever you want now. We're announcing that. It's like, why? And it's not about, okay, should we be listening to them? No, that's not what this is about. It's just to show you that this ain't got nothing to do with the science, and that most of this is arbitrary. And this is why for so many people, if you wonder why so many people put their little tinfoil hats on and try to make this make sense, is because they have to, because they ain't gonna tell you the truth. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.